Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Jamaica ranks 69 on TI's 2022-2023 Corruption Perceptions Index. PAJ wants media at next court hearing for former MP Julian Silvera. And later in sports, West Indies under-19 defeat Sri Lanka under-19 in Super 6 stage of ICC Youth World Cup. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. Jamaica has managed to maintain its best score ever on the Transparency International's 2022-2023 Corruption Perceptions Index. The country ranks 69 out of 180 countries, O'Shane Masters reports.
The Corruption Perceptions Index, CPI, which ranks countries and territories by their perceived levels of public sector corruption, were released Tuesday morning. It scores on a scale out of 100, where 0 means highly corrupt and 100 free of corruption. Jamaica's 2022-23 CPI score of 44 out of 100 continues to stand since 2020. That score was previously attained in 2017, 2018, 2020, and 2021. It dropped a point on the index in 2019. Transparency International says over the past 20 years of ranking the island, it has averaged a CPI score of only 38 of 100. Prior to its 2017 CPI score of 44 out of 100, Jamaica had never scored higher than 41, its CPI score in 2015. Jamaica's lowest CPI score ever was 30, recorded in 2009. Transparency International's assessment notes that Jamaica's CPI jump in 2017 came in the same year that the Andrew Holness-led Parliament passed the long-awaited anti-corruption law, the Integrity Commission Act. The act merged the country's then 3 leading anti-corruption commissions into a single entity, the Integrity Commission. A CPI score of below 50 means a country has a serious corruption problem. Jamaica has been firmly planted in this category for 22 years. A poor CPI signals prevalent bribery, lack of punishment for corruption, and public institutions that do not respond to citizens' needs. Now, in referencing Jamaica in its 2023 CPI report, Transparency International says, quote, collusion among the powerful, as well as the overwhelming dominance of the executive over the legislature, weakens the parliament's oversight capacities, creating conditions ripe for abuse and corruption, end quote. Now, 9 English-speaking Caribbean countries were ranked by Transparency International in 2023. Barbados, the Bahamas, and St. Vincent came out on top, with Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana at the bottom, the same order as they were in 2022 and 2021. Barbados' country ranking improved from 29 in 2022 to 24 in 2023. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
The Press Association of Jamaica PAJ is hoping the media will be allowed to cover the Julian Silvera murder case at the next court hearing in February. Former PAJ President George Davis was speaking on TVJ Smile Jamaica Tuesday. The high-profile Julian Silvera murder case has been the heart of contention since the judge presiding over the case decided to bar observers, including the media. Since then, the Press Association of Jamaica, PAJ, has been calling for legislative changes to the Gun Court Act. But the Director of Public Prosecution, Paula Llewellyn, says she is not in support of repealing Section 13(1) of the Act, which allows the barring. Former PAJ President George Davis says while he understands the DPP's position, for the PAJ it's different.
Jamaica then was a different Jamaica to what we have now. And I can say with confidence that those who shaped that law, it was an emergency passage of that piece of legislation under Michael Manley, those who framed that legislation didn't encounter as nuanced a situation as this Silvera murder matter, with the fact that a gun was involved, but it was a crime domestic in nature. The genesis at the plinth of the situation is a domestic dispute. Yeah, that's what the allegations are. And so this nuance was missed, and you can understand it was 50 years ago.
Mr. Davis says the media and the judiciary have always maintained a good relationship. As a matter of fact, he says the media has a good track record relating to discharging its duties in matters of high sensitivity.
We have obeyed instructions from judges where we are forbidden from publishing certain information which may be injurious to certain parties to the case. We have obeyed instructions to vacate the court when a matter has to be, a segment of the trial has to be conducted without the glare of the media. Case in point, the ongoing Beachy Stout murder trial, where there was a trial within a trial to determine the admissibility of voice recordings of him allegedly plotting to kill his wife. We vacated the court at that point. So the media has a record in terms of obeying instructions from the court to act in a certain manner.
Mr. Davis says the PAJ is hopeful that the situation will change and the media will be allowed to cover the proceedings.
Madam Justice was gracious enough to open the door to that. She did say that she may, as the proceedings go along, allow the media. That was, of course, before our intervention and our call and the discourse in the public domain, because it is clear if anybody, and the judiciary does have their pulse on the public sentiment, they know that this is an unprecedented thing that the public wants to know about. So the door was left ajar, and we hope by virtue of our strong intervention and strong advocacy that good sense will prevail. The DPP has said it is her intention and her officers to do what they can to facilitate the public's interest being represented by the media being allowed. And we hope that by the time February 8 comes around, when Mr. Silvera is due to make his next court appearance, that the media will be there to report for the public.
And speaking on Power 106 Morning Agenda Tuesday, Attorney Yallahs Samuel says the judge used the wrong basis on which she excluded the press.
She used her inherent jurisdiction to clear a courtroom when she should have said, this is a gun court sitting and the law does not permit me to allow anyone other than the witnesses and the court staff and lawyers. That's what threw the whole thing into disarray, because once there's an allegation that a gun is used to commit a murder, then it becomes a gun court sitting. And 50 years of that law has meant that we have not been able to have the public or the press coming into gun court matters. That's the second way. So it threw it into disarray when she relied on the wrong principle, respectfully.
Meanwhile, the Advocates Association of Jamaica is cautioning that public criticism of members of the judiciary could lead to undermining of their authority. This is in response to the PAJ's statement that it is wary of a suggestion from the Jambar that the judiciary is above criticism. The association asserts that while there can be differences in points of view, the decision of judges in any matter should be respected.
That we should promote the idea of disagreement as opposed to criticism of the judiciary. Criticism of the judiciary can cause or bring about a diminution of the value of judges and a reduction of the importance of the judicial system. It is essential to preserve the integrity of the judicial system and the judiciary. And so everybody may have different opinions, but if a judge in his or her best judgment believe that this action for the time being might be appropriate, it is worthy of being respected.
Former PAJ President George Davis has responded to that comment.
In our country, once you start to criticize things, people think you're on a path to disrespect, because that's how we are as Jamaicans. And so the PAJ criticizing the decision, people are cautioning us to proceed carefully because they think that we're on the path of disrespect. You could never disrespect the judiciary, of course not. Yes, the men and women who serve the bench are honorable men and women, and the system itself is time honored. The fact is, though, we believe that the decision is not so much a decision that rankles with us, It's a lack of an explanation.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Councillor for the Yallahs division in St. Thomas, John Lee, is reassuring vendors that they will be allowed to occupy the Yallahs market as soon as possible. The reassurance follows an extension notice posted on the gate of the property.
They are concerned because we all know that the notice was given to the Paul Bogle Foundation from last year, October, in regards to the lease agreement between the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation and the Paul Bogle Foundation.
He says while the extension may have been an agreement between the CEO and the mayor, he believes the Paul Bogle Foundation will evacuate the premises before the end of the extension.
I rest assured that under the watch of the Minister of Local Government, the Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, the Paul Bogle Foundation will be evicted as soon as possible because their lease is expired and the property will go back in the condition of the Yallahs market.
The government needs to be held accountable for unfair settlement between the National Housing Trust, NHT, and Dexim Holdings Limited. That's according to Attorney at Law and MP caretaker for Northeast St. Elizabeth, Zulika Jess. The NHT took Exim to court after the company failed to hand over 200 housing units in the out-of-the-blue housing development in Discover Bay, St. Anne. Following a court order, the parties agreed to end their contractual agreement. It is also agreed for Exim to refund the $650 million down payment the NHT made with an additional $20 million payment.
By any stretch of the imagination, not in a situation where if it is that the contract had been performed according to the terms of the original agreement, these same houses, which were to be delivered at a cost of $12.5 million, are actually now being valued at and sold for $25 million. That's a loss to NHT contributors, and it is a loss to the National Housing Trust because it means that the equity that they would have had in those houses, they've lost that.
She says the situation is unacceptable.
I think that heads clearly need to roll for a situation like this. It cannot be business as usual. It cannot be that we're going to misuse the fund or the National Housing Trust and then expect that persons ought to accept it and carry on when we live in a situation where persons are in dire need of housing. And yet we have that case where a developer can simply utilize the funds and not live up to the terms of the agreement.
It's now time for the Business Minute.
Jamaicans paid an average 1.2% more for utilities and related products and services for December 2022 to December 2023. For the month of December 2023 alone, the housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels category saw inflation of 2.5%. That's compared with November 2023. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica says the increase was mainly linked to a 3.3% upward movement in rental costs. A 1.2% increase in electricity costs also resulted in a 1.2% inflation for the group electricity, gas, and other fuels. Water supplies and miscellaneous goods grew by 1.7% as a result of higher water and sewage rates. And businesses are against suggestions for it to be mandated by legislation for companies to pay dividends. It comes following one of the island's largest banks, National Commercial Bank, foregoing 3 years of dividends. Carl Townsend is a Chief Country Officer for Jamaica for Capital Markets at the JMMB Group.
Dividends are a function of profits. It's a function of the company's own reinvestment needs. It's a function of dividend policy. It's a function of a number of different components. So you really can't mandate that a company must pay dividends, right? A company ought to pay dividends where it is prudent so to do.
And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Shane Masters.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, Venezuela's Supreme Justice Tribunal has upheld a ban which prevents presidential candidate Maria Corina Machado from holding office, upsetting the opposition's plans for elections set for later this year. The former lawmaker won the opposition's independently run presidential primary last October with more than 90% of the votes. The court's decision came hours after 3 of Machado's allies were detained on accusations of conspiracy amid growing tensions between Maduro's government and the political opposition. On the international scene, former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has been sentenced to 10 years in prison after being charged with leaking state secrets. Khan, who was ousted by his opponents as Prime Minister in 2022, is already serving a 3-year prison term after being convicted of corruption. He has called all the charges against him politically motivated. And Israeli forces have killed 3 militants inside a hospital in Jenin in the occupied West Bank. CCTV footage showed members of an undercover unit disguised as medics and other civilians making their way through a corridor with rifles raised. The Israeli military said the militants were hiding in the hospital and that one was about to carry out an attack. The Palestinian Authority's Ministry of Health accused Israel of carrying out a new massacre inside hospitals. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Kelisha Williams.
Thank you, Kelisha. We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report with Jermaine Brown.